Alright, everybody. Welcome back. Today we are exploring a ripoff of King Kong. Well, I mean, he's sort of a ripoff of King Kong. He's a ripoff of King Kong in some ways, but like not in other ways. Basically, do you remember Droom? If Droom is a ripoff of Godzilla, this guy's a ripoff of King Kong. His name is a Gorgilla, and he is the resident giant ape for the Marvel Universe. Basically. Actually, one of a few different giant apes in the Marvel Universe. But the reason I call him a ripoff is because there are actually some compelling comparisons that we're going to go over, and I'm convinced you'll believe me in the end. But getting the initial stuff out of the way, Gorgilla is kind of a lost species of ape man. He is meant to be the missing link between ape and human. He is a 30-foot tall ape with a coat of brown fur which covers his entire body. The interesting thing about his fur is that it offers him protection from damage. It's so thick that even bullets cannot pierce it. Also, Gorgilla is extremely strong and can lift up to 10 tons, all of which is very much true about King Kong, by the way. So now we need to talk about the origins of this creature. But it's a little strange because he doesn't have the kind of origin that you would be like expecting. This is another parallel with King Kong because he doesn't have any like specific Marvel moment. You know, there's no accident, no science experiment, anything like that. It's portrayed that Gorgilla has simply always existed, and he is a member of a race which is nearly gone extinct. So this time the story doesn't start out with a scientist, but instead he is an archaeologist. He is searching for the missing link between humans and apes, and finally, after years of searching, he thinks he's finally found it. The missing link exists on an island known as Borneo. And now he must take this evidence to the museum and start an expedition to the island of Borneo to find the missing link and uncover the origins of humanity. Luckily, the other archaeologists are receptive to the idea of an expedition, and they decide to leave immediately. The trip goes well without incidents. However, when they arrive, the natives of Borneo, oddly enough, are aware of the existence of the missing link, but they are scared of the creature. They refer to it as the God of Vengeance and say that it lives at the top of Midnight Mountain. However, on top of Midnight Mountain, the archaeologists find a giant wall which is being fiercely guarded by headhunters. However, the archaeologists are able to make it past the headhunters, not realizing that those headhunters were actually trying to protect them from the monsters on the other end of the wall. And now that the archaeologists are on the other side of the wall, guess who they run into? They run straight into Gorgilla with all of his mighty strength and impenetrable fur. And as we can see, Gorgilla really does look like the missing link between apes and men. He has a sort of human face, and even though he is aggressive, he is not without intelligence. The archaeologists are in danger now merely because of Gorgilla's size, but then something absolutely fantastic happens. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, a Tyrannosaurus Rex shows up to eat the archaeologists, and as if proving he has intelligence, this causes Gorgilla to feel a sort of empathy with the humans, and so he decides to protect them by fighting the T-Rex in combat. The battle is fierce, but in the end, the mighty Gorgilla is just too powerful and defeats the T-Rex. This gives the archaeologists enough time to escape the scene and make it back to their plane, where they leave Borneo for good. However, on their flight back to civilization, they remark at how surprised they are that Gorgilla decided to protect them, and they feel that they have some sort of kinship with the primordial ape man. So that's the story of the first appearance of Gorgilla. Can you see all the ways in which he is similar to King Kong? Well, I mean, okay, if you're stuck on that point, don't worry, because I'll go over all of it at the end of the video. But before that happens, I have a surprise for you. Can you say sequel? Yeah, That's right, Gorgilla is a freaking double feature. We have another Gorgilla story which came out about 6 months after this one, and it is a direct continuation of the events of this story. So originally the story of Gorgilla was open-ended. They just kind of left him there with this theory that he had an emotional connection with them. However, this was more true than they understood, because after they left, Gorgilla began to feel a longing to be with humanity. And so he decided to leave Midnight Mountain and stow away on a shipping boat. For a while, everything was fine. Gorgilla made himself comfortable and settled into a long trip to New York. However, when the sailors arrived at the New York dock, they discovered Gorgilla hiding in the cargo hold. Luckily, Gorgilla is able to make his escape. However, the veritable cat is essentially out of the bag. News spreads quickly, and now the world knows that Gorgilla exists. So Gorgilla decides to hide in the sewers under New York. Meanwhile, the local media broadcasts a report which alerts the original archaeologist who traveled to Midnight Mountain. And even though everyone seems to view Gorgilla as a threat, the archaeologist knows for a fact that Gorgilla is a friend. The archaeologist goes to the local authorities to attempt to persuade them that Gorgilla means them no harm. However, they are not convinced. They claim Gorgilla is a threat and must be destroyed, and it doesn't help the situation when Gorgilla comes bursting up from an underground at a baseball stadium. Immediately, the police attack Gorgilla, but of course he is nearly invulnerable to their attacks. They attempt to take him down with some gas, but that doesn't seem to work, and then they try to use nets to halt his progress. But all of these attempts are useless, and Gorgilla makes his escape. Then the story takes a turn. The entire city is in an uproar after going after Gorgilla, which gives a band of foreign spies the perfect distraction to commit an assassination. They happen to be in the underground subway and plan to kill a political official with a bomb. What they don't suspect is that Gorgilla happens to be hiding in that very same subway. Gorgilla senses evil inside of the spies and decides in his primitive brain to destroy them before they can commit their dastardly assassination. Of course, they are no match for Gorgilla, and one of the spies, having been defeated, flees to the Statue of Liberty, but Gorgilla is hot on his trail. He climbs up after the spy, and this is when everybody notices, obviously, a giant monkey man climbing the top of the Statue of Liberty. Huge waves of police and army and helicopters surround the statue, and they take aim at Gorgilla. Gorgilla succeeds in finally defeating the spy, but it's too late. The army aims bazookas and makes a direct hit on Gorgilla. He tumbles and falls all the way down to the ground, where he dies from his wounds. Then, when humanity puts together that he was not a threat, but was instead trying to protect the humans from the spies and their bomb, everyone has a somber moment of reflection, standing over the dead corpse of our long-lost ancestor. So that's at least the first continuity, let's say, of Gorgilla. So now let's take a moment and recount all the ways in which he is exactly like King Kong. Okay, first of all, he's a giant gorilla. That's easy, I'll give you that one for free. Second, he exists on an island which is inhabited by natives who worship him as a god. Compelling, right? 3, he has a fight with a dinosaur. 4, he stows away on a boat traveling to New York. 5, he climbs a large building in New York and falls to his death. And finally, they use his death as a somber reminder of our own fallacies as human beings. So basically, he's a ripoff, but that doesn't make him a bad character. I have to admit, I feel good about the guy. I mean, in truth, he isn't entirely a ripoff. According to the files of Ulysses Bloodstone, who chronicles the biographies of every monster in the Marvel Universe, Gorgilla is actually not the missing link between man and ape. Instead, he is simply the result of genetic experimentation. The Deviants, yes, those are real comic book characters. The Deviants who came to Earth long ago did experiments in which resulted in many monsters, including Gorgilla and the dinosaur that he battled on Borneo. And it turns out that this is actually the truth. Ulysses Bloodstone actually knows what he's talking about. The archaeologist who discovered Gorgilla's name is actually Anthony Druid, and happens to be a close associate with Ulysses to the point where they work on the same monster hunting team. And by his personal account, the personal account of Anthony Druid, not only did Gorgilla survive his adventure in New York, but he actually went on to be a hero and save the world as we know it. This story that I'm referring to can be found in a series called The Marvel Universe in issues number 4 through 7. In this series, we discover that monsters have been appearing all over the world, and so a team of monster hunters, including Ulysses Bloodstone, Anthony Druid, Zawadi the Wakandan, and Makari the Eternal, disguised as someone named Jake Curry, team up to figure out where they're coming from and put a stop to it. First, we get a glimpse of Gorgilla on Midnight Mountain and watch as he battles the dinosaur, very much like that original issue. That much that we know is true, and we see it here recreated beautifully with modern artwork. But what we're never told is that Gorgilla was actually brought to New York purposefully, and not of his free will, but under the spell of mind control, which forced him to rampage through the city. So who would do this and why? Well, that's what our team wants to find out. When Gorgilla climbs the Statue of Liberty and falls to his death, he actually did not die. Instead, our team saves him from certain death and decides that the best thing to do is just to return him home to Borneo. So they all travel together back to Midnight Mountain in attempt to domesticate Gorgilla. Anthony Druid, who has psychic powers, communicates with Gorgilla and discovers some interesting facts about Gorgilla, and that he is actually not a bad creature at all. At this point, Jake Curry, a member of the monster hunting team, reveals himself to be one of the Eternals, known as Mercury or Mercari, if you're into the modern stuff, and together they travel into the jungle to confront the source of the monster infestation, with Gorgilla acting as their backup. They travel underground, and they discover that the deviant known as Dr. Crow has been breeding these monsters and is the primary source of all this chaos and pandemonium that's been happening across the globe. But how will they stop a foe as powerful as this? Well, it's a good thing they have Gorgilla as backup. Just then, Gorgilla smashes his way into the cave and saves the day, using nothing but incredible strength and his willingness to help his friends. And now that they have the upper hand, they destroy Dr. Crow's genetic creatures and make their escape, thus saving the world from certain doom. So that's it. That's my full explanation. Not only is Gorgilla a monster, but he's actually a hero. And in that sense, he's not really like King Kong at all. So I thoroughly enjoyed doing research for this character. There's not really that many like him in the Marvel Universe, but unfortunately that is really where his story ends. But at least we got to see him go out on a high note, unlike many of the other characters I used for these stories. And if you come at me in the comments about the Fing Fang 4, just know that I am aware of the Fing Fang 4, and I may possibly do a video on it, even though I don't necessarily enjoy comedy comics. Yeah, I know Gorgilla is one of the Fing Fang 4. And if you don't know who the Fing Fang 4 are, just consider yourself lucky, or Google it, I guess, if you want. But that's it for this comic right now. If you want to read more comics with me, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, nerds, stay heroic.